Okay, so we're moving into Unit 6, which is all about expressions and equations, and we're going to start solving equations. But first we need to get some vocabulary down. So I've given you the 7 terms that we're going to find definitions for down here. So let's do the first one. So an unknown quantity or expression whose value can change. Isaiah, what do you think that is? An unknown quantity or expression whose value can change. A variable, good. Something can vary, it means it can change, right? Variable, good. Hannah. The parts of an expression separated by a plus or a positive or negative sign. No. They're talking about something like this. What are each of those things called, do you know? Terms, good. Right? If I have 2 of them, that's called a binomial. If I have 1 of them, it's a monomial. If I had something that looks like this, that would be a trinomial. There's 1, 2, 3 terms. Okay. Michaela, the part of the math sentence whose value is always the same, represented by a numeral. No. If something's always the same, it remains what? Constant, good. So that constant is a number that sits at the end by itself. So what number in that expression would be the constant? Okay. Does that 7 ever change? Is that 7 ever going to change? No. So what that means is no matter what you plug in for x, that 7 would always be the same. So if we plugged in a 0 for x, right, we would have 3 times 0 plus 7. But that 7 is still a 7, right? 3 times 1 plus 7. That 7 is never changing. Right? This value, the 3x, changes depending on what we use for x. But the 7 doesn't change. That's why we call it the constant. Okay? Sean Benham. A numerical or constant quantity placed before and multiplying the variable in an algebraic expression. So this 3 would be one of those. What's that number in front of a variable called? The number in front of the x. It's got a name. So let's cross out what we've already used up here. We've used constant, variable, and terms. Good. Coefficient. So it's the number in front of a variable. So for this one it would be -4. For this one it would be 10. Okay, it's just that number in front. Okay. All right. Trinity. A combination of variables, numbers, and or operations that represents a mathematical relationship, but no statement of equality or inequality. So that means it doesn't have an equal sign or any inequality signs. So if it doesn't have any of those, what do we call it? If you read the next sentence, it'll give you a hint. Oh, I couldn't hear you. So an expression is like an incomplete sentence, basically, right? If you think about it in a, like, the boy ran is a complete sentence. But if you just say, hey, that's not a complete sentence. And it's an expression, but it's not a sentence. So mathematically, an expression would be something like this, like 3x plus 7. But there's no equal sign, there's no inequality. I don't know what to do with it yet. Okay? So the only thing I can do is simplify it, but it's not a complete equation or inequality yet. All right. So we used expression and we used coefficient. Rachel, a mathematical statement that two or more expressions are equal. What would we call that? An equation. And for something to be an equation, what does it have to have in it? It has to have an equal sign. Good. So Charles, by power of elimination, an algebraic relation that shows a quantity is greater than or less than another quantity. So there's our 7 terms we had to start with. Inequality, right? So if something's not equal, it must be unequal. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's going to be an inequality. You can actually think of as an equation as an equality. Same thing. Okay. So that can mean greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. All right, so let's do some of those examples at the bottom. Nat, that first one, 2 plus 4 minus 3k plus 5f, what is that? Is that an equation, an expression, an inequality, a coefficient, a variable? Let's eliminate what it's not. Is it an inequality? How do you know? Because it doesn't have what? Because it doesn't have what? Any of these signs, right? So it can't be an inequality. Is it an equation? What does an equation have to have? Does it have an equal sign? No. So there's only one thing left that it can be. Things have to be one of those 3 things. It has to be an equation, an inequality, or if it doesn't have any of those symbols in it, what is it then? Think of not a complete sentence. If something's not a complete sentence, what is it? Starts with an E. Expression, good. Okay. Mark, 5x minus 4 is greater than 31. What is that? Is that an equality, inequality, expression? What is that? What kind of sign does it have in it? It's got a negative sign. What about this? What's that? Right, so if it's greater than or less than, what do we call those? An equation or an inequality? Inequality, good. Because something has to be bigger or smaller than something. It can't be equal to that something, right? All right, Dylan. 2 plus 4 minus 3k plus 5f equals 31 is a what? What symbol does it have in it? What? What symbol does it have in it, Dylan? Okay, so if it has an equal sign, what do we call it? An equation. Good. Okay, so Eleni, give me an example of a constant. What? 4, right? Perfect. Give me an example. Allison, is Allison here? No. Courtney, give me an example of a coefficient. Pick a number, pick a variable, basically. Say the number. There's your variable. Now pick a number. Okay. So the coefficient is the 3. Okay. In that example, what's your variable, Courtney? X. Okay. Variables can be any letter. Doesn't matter. Pick your favorite. Doesn't matter. Okay. If Sean Cheatham, if I give you this, how many terms are in that? 4x squared plus 3x plus 5. 3. Good. Right? 1, 2, 3. It's how many pieces you have that are separated by plus or minus signs. Excellent. That's it.